This is Between the Brackets, a Mediawiki podcast, episode 34, May 14th, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and my guest for this episode is Andre Klapper, also known as Malyachko, which looks like Malyako, but it's Malyachko, is his alternate username, who works for the Wikimedia Foundation as the official Bugwrangler, as well as a developer advocate in the developer advocacy team, which is part of the technical engagement group. Though I know him best as the guy who gets automatically subscribed to every bug report and task put on Fabricator, the Wikimedia bug tracker, and often fixes up the bug reports before I even see them in my email. I don't know if he's ever written a line of Mediawiki code, but I still consider him an important part of the Mediawiki developer community. And most recently, he spearheaded the new look for the Mediawiki.org front page, which went live in April. So, Andre, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome too. Thanks for having me.
So, where do you live?
I'm based in Prague, in Czech Republic.
Yeah, that's a fantastic city. You're the official Bugwrangler for the Wikimedia Foundation. There was one guy who did that before you, Mark Hirschberger, although back then it was called Bugmeister. And ironically, when it went from the American guy to the German guy, the title changed from Bugmeister to Bugwrangler. Is that all correct?
Yeah, that's all correct, yes.
So what does that entail, being the Bugwrangler?
It's somewhere between everything, I guess. I usually see it as a support function, because I try to save developers and users time a little bit by taking a look at mostly new incoming tasks or tickets or whatever you want to call that, where people either describe a software problem, like a software bug, or ask for a certain functionality, like feature requests or enhancement requests. And pretty often things or some aspects are unclear, and then you try to ask the right questions and get more information to make things clearer. And in theory, I'd love to save some time, especially of developers. So it's a bit maybe like a support desk, a little bit at least, to clear things before a developer takes a look. It also pretty often means trying to help identifying the right baskets, let's put it like this, like which software project is this about, or which code base is involved, and that can pretty quickly get pretty interesting when it comes to complex systems like Wikimedia.
Yeah, sure. Do you feel like you've gotten more of an instinct as to, how best to structure a bug report, whether it's the title or the assignee, that kind of thing?
I usually don't very often set assignees, because that's really up to either teams or individuals or volunteers, because nobody's, well, apart from organizations like Wikimedia Foundation or Wikimedia Deutschland or other organizations and companies who actually have people who get paid for doing software development. But apart from that, I don't think there's anyone who could say like, hey, you should work on this or that. So it's mostly up to maintainers of code repositories or projects to follow their stuff in the right baskets, and that's why you have these project tags. Like when somebody reports an issue or a task, you can add a project, and some people look at these projects to get the whole list of tasks or ideas related to them. Yes, I admit I do have, let's say, an idea how a good bug report looks like, which usually means clear steps to reproduce, then what you expected to happen and what actually happens. But human language is already complicated enough to really describe things in the way that the other person also interprets it. Plus, of course, Wikimedia is a global movement, so a lot of people, their English, well, I shouldn't say could be better, but it's not their primary language. So that's also sometimes a thing to help sort out what did this person do and how did this happen? And you know how software bugs are. Sometimes you cannot even reproduce it easily, and there's some setting somewhere or some other piece of software which interferes. And sorting out these steps is one part of what I'm trying to do, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the right way to structure a bug report, is like, that set of 3 or 4 sections, like what I did, what I expected, what actually happened, and my setup. I guess it seems rare for bug reports to come in with that perfectly structured.
It is.
Maybe some people are better at that than others.
It is, yeah. Of course, it's also a bit of a cultural thing, like how picky, how strict, how structured do you want to be. And there's all types of people out there. There are, of course, a few people who are perfectly fine in a list of 10 or 11 steps and sorted out all kinds of settings that are related. While in my life, of course, I've also seen tickets which just say something like, it doesn't work, and that's all.
Right.
And then you need to start asking the right questions, hopefully the right ones.
Yeah, turn on the computer or something. Yeah. So how long have you been the Bugwrangler? When did you start doing that?
In Wikimedia, that's 6.5 years ago, I think.
Okay. In 2012, late 2012.
Yeah, late 2012.
Is that when you joined the Wikimedia Foundation?
Yes. That was actually it was a bit more of. It wasn't planned. Let's put it like this. I've done these things like trying to manage bug reports without fixing them myself before,
Right.
Also for other companies, and also in my free time and other free and open source projects. And in 2012, I was mostly curious myself, trying to find out how other bigger free and open source software projects try to manage their public bug reports. So I ended up on Mediawiki.org, realizing that they were looking for somebody to do this job, and I applied. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, that leads into the other thing I was wondering about, is what you were doing before then. I guess you did similar things at other companies, at real companies.
I wouldn't call the foundation unreal, but yeah.
All right.
No. Of course, beforehand I've done related things or similar things for a subcontractor at that time, Nokia, because Nokia also had a mobile phone, or let's say small device, which ran mostly on free and open source software. It was Linux based. And I've also worked with companies like, for example, Novell, SUSE on projects like that. Yes.
Oh, okay. You started out doing it for GNOME, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I found that I found that out in a book called oh man, now I forgot the name of it. Open Advice.
Yeah. Open Advice by Lydia Pincher. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I recommend anyone to read that whole book. That I'll put a link to it from the podcast episode. But that you have, I don't know how many chapters are there. Each one's written by someone, but you have a chapter talking about how you got started doing. So you were basically doing this exact kind of thing for GNOME.
Yeah,
that was your first experience with, I guess, software development or the software development process.
Probably, yes. Well, I've been curious about technology beforehand, and also playing with whatever disassembling binaries and all these things you do when you were 15, 16.
Oh, okay.
And at that time, I think World Wide Web slowly got popular, so I still had a dial-up connection. Also later on, but how I got involved really into this was that I was also a simple user of a piece of software, had my questions on the mailing list, was asking for features, and at some point people pointed me to this thingy called an issue tracker or task tracking system, and that got me curious, and I got more involved, and triaged tickets there and cleaned up a bit, and it felt like a good way of contributing because while I can do a little bit of programming, I understand the basics. I don't see myself as a software developer, and I usually like the comparison to a friend of mine who's in the music business, but he's not a musician himself, but is more like in the journalism part of it. So he has a lot of stuff to do with music, but more as a, let's say, support function maybe. And that feels similar to me, that I don't develop code, but I have to do it with a lot of aspects of software development.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
in the
Yeah.
GNOME project, I've also done a few other things, like I've worked on translations, I've written user documentation or release notes, and being part of release engineering team there. So I hope that I have a kind of holistic view, though of course that's hard if you have a pretty big and complex project organization.
Yeah. Um, so that's interesting that you say you know felt the need to give back. I mean, do you feel that kind of moral imperative, I guess, if you're benefiting from open source software to contribute back in some way?
Not strongly, but a little bit, yes. So I would say I would agree when it comes to, for example, I have a question on a mailing list or in a support forum, and then I should maybe stick around if I use that piece of software more often anyway, and also answer some questions by other people. To that extent, yes. But I wouldn't say that in general somebody has to give back something or such.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so how did you end up working with Mediawiki specifically? Was it just because of that job posting, or sorry, I already forgot um, whether you were doing Mediawiki stuff before you officially got the position?
I wasn't doing Mediawiki stuff before I applied.
Okay.
I've been an editor on Wikipedias, but not very active. More like the person who's sometimes fixing a typo or adding a sentence. Not much. I was actually surprised when I applied for that position that somebody in the Wikimedia Foundation told me that I had created 2 articles on Wikipedias in my life, because I couldn't even remember that. So,
Yeah, okay.
but not really active now. Like, for example, on the software side with Mediawiki, I had nothing to do, but I was very curious about the complexity of the Wikimedia system, because you have, I mean, so many, I think 300 languages or something like that, about 900 websites, and a lot of
Wow.
different levels in the software architecture and tools around. And I usually like complexity and the mostly interesting problems that come out of it.
Yeah. Well, 900 websites just run by just Wikimedia
Oh yes,
sites. Yeah.
Wikimedia or Wikimedia Foundation sites. Yeah, not Mediawiki installations. That's probably tens of thousands. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as complexity, how does MediaWiki and all the Wikimedia software compare to, you know, a Linux distribution or whatever, or desktop or any the other kinds of things you worked on?
Interesting question. So, well, when it comes to categories, for example, I would go for 3 categories, which are mobile, desktop, and web. And I think I've been involved in all 3 of them now. So when it comes to Linux distribution, I usually put it mostly into the desktop section,
Yeah.
at
Okay.
least from an end user point of view. Of course, you also have servers and so on. While with MediaWiki, the distribution ways are different, and I guess also the set of pre-installed extensions is smaller. I'm not sure how many extensions by default are bundled in a MediaWiki software tarball release for public use. Probably a few
Right.
dozens, I guess. But they're out there. There's thousands of MediaWiki extensions, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And distribution-wise, well, it's a bit of a different package. Like, I guess you can also run a very stripped-down, minimal Linux distribution, but the default ones, you also end up with, I think, more than 1,000 or 2,000 packages.
Yeah, okay, right. That makes sense. That's really where the complexity comes in, is just the endless number of additional software applications that get bundled in, tied in. Let's see. So in addition to being a bug wrangler, you're also a developer advocate, working in the developer advocacy team. I have to admit, I read through the page about the developer advocacy team a bunch of times, but I'm still not sure I understand what you guys do. What is it that the team does?
The developer advocacy team is part of a technology department in the Wikimedia Foundation, and it's actually a sub-team of technical engagement. So one team is developer advocacy that I'm in, and the other team is cloud services. When it comes to developer advocacy, I'd say we're mostly after processes and supporting developers who want to use Mediawiki or our APIs. Let's say retention and growth, especially when it comes to the volunteer community. And the other part, cloud services, is they're running ToolForge, which is a cloud hosting service provided by Wikimedia. So there's, I think, nowadays 1,300 instances of machines running. And they're mostly on the engineering side of things. So, for example, a lot of stuff is maintenance, or lately the migration to a new version of the underlying operating system running on all these virtual machines. And yeah.
You're talking about ToolForge specifically?
Yes, ToolForge, exactly.
Yeah, that's it was known until recently as Tool Server, or is the
Tool?
No, first it was Tool Server, and then it was something else,
Labs.
and then ToolForge.
Yeah.
Tool Labs. Okay.
Tool Labs. It was Tool Server, as far as I know, was until a few years ago ran, I think, by Wikimedia Deutschland. To host also like tools that are useful for editors and developers on Wikimedia sites. And the support for that didn't scale, and I don't know the exact history of this. But at some point, Tool Labs was set up with a bit more of support of actually paid Wikimedia Foundation staff. And Tool Server itself was, I think, switched off a few years ago, but many people still use that very name to refer to what is nowadays called ToolForge. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I know a little bit about it. It's basically you submit your code set, and then you get a subdomain or something on ToolForge, and your code actually runs there. And then people can use it. I mean, what are examples of some popular ToolForge tools?
Now you got me. I would have to look that up, to be honest.
I mean, but what kind of things are people doing it with? Is it like bots, Wikipedia bots?
A lot of bots are running on it, exactly. Like, I mean, bots, you could also run them manually on your own machine. But if you want to also allow other users to run them without having to set up anything like locally on their machine, that's exactly what bots can do when they run on ToolForge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd have to look up the catalog of tools now to be really honest.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit like GitHub has this other site, GitHub.io, where you can run GitHub projects.
Yes.
I guess it's a similar kind of concept.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So back to developer advocacy. So you're you're advocating. Are you are you advocating that people become developers, or are you advocating for the existing developers, or both?
Hopefully both. Yeah. So
Okay.
making it easier for easier for existing developers. This is the basically retention part, and also growth when it comes to dragging new developers in, especially having more diverse backgrounds and skill sets is what we'd be interested in. Like
Yeah. Okay.
strengthening, let's say, technical equity, and for that, related to that is improving educational materials like manuals or how-to or guides. That's, for example, one area. And it's also in the long term, hopefully, capacity building for technical contributors in underserved regions. Because when you see the smaller wikis we have, the smaller sites, pretty often the bigger sites like English Wikipedia or stuff like that, they have a lot of technical contributors within their community. So there are people who can, for example, write or fix or update gadgets and other code that's running on their sites. While with very small communities, language communities, there's often nobody who's like technically very skilled. So pretty often it happens that code is getting copied, like a local gadget, and then when something breaks or something underlying an underlying code base has changed, that there's nobody to help out. So that's also an aspect to hopefully in the long run improve.
Yeah. Okay. So what kind of things are you and the team doing to try to increase the amount of developers? Or well, there's two questions. What are you doing to have more developers, and what are you doing to make life easier for developers? We'll start with the recruiting thing, I guess. What are you doing as far as recruiting, if that's the word?
It's one word, yeah. We're running outreach programs, for example. There's Google Summer of Code, Outreachy, and Google Code-In. So that's the outreach part where you have mentors and kind of drag in new contributors. And looking so far at the numbers and how many people stayed around or at some point even got employed for continuing to work on Wikimedia projects is pretty good. Another aspect is improving documentation, making it easier. So, for example, for the last months, some of my colleagues have been working on better API documentation, that you can use the web API to query any information out of pages in a Mediawiki instance, and making that more interactive and easier to use. These kinds of things, for example. And on the cloud services side, there's work going on having a tools catalog. Let's put it like this. So software running on tool labs, on ToolForge, I should say, to make it, let's say, easier discoverable. Because I think when you write a tool and run it on ToolForge, you mostly scratch your own itch. You want to solve a problem that you yourself see. And pretty often that's also a problem that other communities have. And it might not be obvious to them that there is a solution already out there, because they might not know about it. And especially with running hundreds of tools, that's an issue. So there's currently work going on to have a catalog with, let's say, popular or recommended tools. And I think the main focus here is mostly on organizers in the movement. For example, people who run editathons or hackathons.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, discoverability is a big thing for extensions too. So it sounds like you want people to use the Wikimedia APIs, and you also want people to become just standard core Mediawiki developers or something. But the API use is the higher priority. for your team?
Well, currently I would say so. At least for the last months, that what we concentrated on when it comes to improving documentation. At least, the software development related documentation. The thing is, there's a lot of documentation out there, and especially there's stuff on Mediawiki.org, there's stuff on Meta, some stuff is on Wikitech, and I sometimes, this is my personal opinion now, but I sometimes think we even have too much documentation. Because, finding things is hard in both ways, like discovering it or finding a right one if there's 3 or 4 versions out there.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. Well, this is a Mediawiki podcast, so I'm more focused on the Mediawiki side of things than creating tools for that use the Mediawiki API but aren't actually part of it, I guess, although they're both interesting. But so there are probably people listening to this podcast who are developers of some sort but haven't gotten involved in any Wikimedia or Mediawiki related projects. So what would you say, or what can you say to them to try to get them interested in working with Wikimedia or Mediawiki code?
If you want to start contributing, and you don't have a specific problem or a specific area, we usually recommend a page on Mediawiki.org, which is called New Developers, and there are some featured projects where the maintainers actively welcome new contributors. That's one approach. That's a bit more of the mentored approach. The other option is what I mentioned earlier, taking part in an outreach program, but that requires you to, for Google Summer of Code, it requires you to be a student. Google Code requires to be a high school student between 14 and 17, and Outreachy, I think it still requires to be not male, but there's currently discussions about broadening that scope a bit. That's another option. If you're more of a self-learner and like to dive deeper into issues, there's another thing. There is a tag or a project in the Fabricator software, which is our task tracking system, where we kind of track most of the tasks that somebody at some point might work on or not, realistically speaking, when it comes to all the software pieces. And there is a tag called Good First Bug.
Okay.
So there's a longer list of that. People can take a look if they find something interesting, but they're a bit more on their own, because there's no assigned mentors or anything like that. That is another option. One problem with that, to be blunt, is also a bit that, of course, these things age. So there might be still tickets from 4 or 5 years ago which are still tagged with Good First Bug, but maybe the software stack has even changed in the meantime and it's not easy anymore. That's the usual problem you have with old open tickets, that some of them might not even be valid, but nobody knows or realized, because you need to be aware that this ticket exists.
That Good First Bug thing, was that what used to be known as Annoying Little Bug, or is that
yes.
Or is that too? Okay.
That was the name of the page on Mediawiki.org, exactly, which also linked to that list. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So actually that gets into the issue of, if someone wants to get involved, but they want to, maximize the chance that their patches will get accepted or that their code will be used or useful. What are places where there's the most, low hanging fruit, or the where it's easiest to get involved? The sections of the code, I guess.
I would really recommend the projects that are listed on the New Developers page. The other way around, I would even say when you're a new contributor and your motivation is to contribute to a Wikimedia project, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to start with the Mediawiki core software, There are some areas of the core software which are newer and well written and more like nowadays software architecture, but you also have pieces that are 15 years old, and that's
Right.
hard to distinguish, let's say, for a new contributor.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that experience. I have maybe one or two lines in core Mediawiki that I contributed, but it's um, there was some more, then they got removed later. But yeah, it's always there's just always a lot of discussion that has to happen, or it seems that was the case for me anyway. That a lot of people had to agree, and
If
um,
if
yeah.
if you are a new contributor, there are some guidelines on MediaWiki.org, which are also linked from the tutorial how to use, well, Garrett's, which many projects use for code review. Some others are on GitHub, which give you some tips like how to write a good patch, for example, to keep things atomic, uh, to have rather a bunch of small patches than one big one, and all these things that improve the likeliness or probability that you get a review. But
Yeah.
I also have to say that code review is a structural problem we have in the Wikimedia movement. I cannot speak for repositories on GitHub because I look less at that. But when it comes to Wikimedia Garrett, where most of the code review happens, um, it's been a problem that's been discussed for a while, and there is currently a Code Health Group, it's called, and
Oh, okay.
I'm also part of that, and we hope to tackle that soon a bit better. Let's put it like this.
Yeah. I mean, do you just need more people? It's. I mean, you have no shortage of current tasks to do. It sounds like.
It's a problem on many levels actually. It's sometimes technically like can you even find or follow all these things that you think you're able to review, like code repositories or areas. Um, it's also a social and organizational part. Like, is it part of your culture or your team or as a volunteer of your attitude to quickly review contributed patches? And especially if you are paid and have a lot of other things on your list, and you have
Right.
some quarterly goals or things like that, this can easily be like the minutes you want to save every day by doing something that's more urgent. So there's many aspects related to it, and I hope that in the next months we can find some best practices on this. But this also has to do a lot with statistics, like even getting an overview, like which projects are worse or better and why, is still something where we are not yet where I'd like us to be.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Talking about code review always makes me feel a little guilty because there's just there's always patches to my own extensions that are waiting for review, and I definitely encourage those. But at the same time, it it adds up. It's a responsibility I don't always meet in a timely manner. I guess I'll say that. Um, so um, so as far as documentation is, that's of course another issue. I guess constant topic of conversation that it could be improved. And you are improving it, but there's well, I don't know. I mean, what is there? What's the thinking as far as the standard documentation of core MediaWiki and extensions? Is that something that you're working on or planning to work on, you collectively?
Well, let's say we're involved. So the focus has been lately more on API documentation when it comes to MediaWiki core, like an API reference and things like these. It's not that we are like improving specific API documentation of specific commands or things like that internally. That's really mostly up to development teams. However, there are currently plans and discussions related to a better developer portal, which I
Okay.
would say we currently do not have. There are some approaches. There is, for example, something called a developer hub, but documentation, which means, to me at least, things like how to and guides and also API references, all these kinds of things. I would say they're still scattered, because there is doc.wikimedia.org, I think it was, that's I think only the API reference. I'd have to look that up myself now, because I'm not that deep into that. I'm more like into the documentation for helping new developers to find their ways, how to contribute. But
Right.
yeah, let's say there is room for improvement. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I guess that leads to the next topic. You were in charge of the project to redo the front page of the Mediawiki website at mediawiki.org, which we've talked about quite a bit. But that finally happened about a month ago. It was something people talked about for a long time, and actually there was a failed attempt to try to redo it in 2013 and 2014, and maybe there were even attempts before that. Why do you think it took so long to modify the front page?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly the exact reasons for that. I was wondering myself a bit. So this was more of an idea I had one evening that I thought, okay, that front page, both layout and content, I wasn't happy with it.
Yeah.
And I quickly created a mock-up that night, but it took me still 1 year to actually make that change, which happened last month.
Yeah. Okay.
You have, in theory at least, lots of interested parties, because when it comes to Mediawiki.org, which audiences do you try to cover there? It's
Right.
you have editors, you have readers, but there's also the developers. There's system administrators who set up MediaWiki and other software. And which other group did I forget now? There were 4.
I think you
So
said 4. You
okay,
said readers, editors, developers, and sysadmins.
true. Um, I don't know why it took so long. I guess you have to stick to pushing that and have a little bit of a plan at least beforehand. So at some point I realized, okay, this probably needs 3 different phases when it comes to defining the audiences you want to cover, defining the content, and how the content should be organized and look like. And it took me, well, it took me a while also, because sometimes between these phases I was busy with other things. It was also a bit of capacity, and also because people have opinions, of course. So a lot of time you spend with discussions.
Sure. Yeah. Did you have well, in English, I guess we would say carte blanche. I don't know if you know that term. Did you basically could you set the homepage to whatever you wanted ultimately? Did you have the final say on it?
I wouldn't say final say. It's not that I have any special authority that somebody else doesn't have. Okay, technically speaking, I'm one of the administrators on MediaWiki.org, but there's more than 100 people who have that.
Right.
It's I would more see it like as again as an individual scratching my itch. I was unhappy with how it looked like and the content of it. So at some point I was more like, I think I'd like to work on this, and discuss that with my managers and my team, and they were positive about it. And that
Yeah. Okay.
meant I sorted out a bit of the steps that are probably needed, and after every step, communicate, ask for opinions, spam a lot of places to hopefully get awareness. Because I have the feeling that sometimes also outside there on the internet there is this attitude like, why didn't you ask me before you made that change on your website? So I tried to involve people, but it's of course up to people how much they care and if they find the time. But all in all, especially in the last phase, like layouting and the content, there was a lot of good feedback, really helpful, and also lots of things I could incorporate, and that was super helpful. And I'm pretty fine with the outcome. I had to remind myself several times that perfect is the enemy of good, but and it doesn't mean that this is now set in stone. So of course anybody can make further improvements. It just felt like, okay, this is a good compromise for me, hopefully also with most people out there. And of course, if there's further improvements, go ahead. It's not that I'm suddenly the owner of this page or something. I'm just one person who cared and then probably had enough time or resources to actually do it. And I guess that might also be the reason why in 2012, or when the last attempt was, that the person didn't have the resources to follow up, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know what happened.
I don't know either exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, if with luck, 15 years from now, someone can add in some changes at the current rate.
Hopefully earlier.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, as far as the new look, it's definitely cleaner. To me, it feels, comparing the two versions, it feels sort of like subtracting. Like the icons are smaller. There's no longer a big download button like there used to be. Was that the basic idea, to sort of whittle things down and make it look cleaner?
I was mostly after cleaner because my problem was really I was personally confused by all the navigation elements and link lists. And when I started on this, I printed out the old front page at that time and took my notes on paper, and realized like some elements or some links existed 3 or 4 times to the very same target page, or just already the amount of navigation elements. There was a top bar, there were links below, there is the sidebar. There was also enough information when I thought, is this now really relevant when I go to this page for the first time? And it's also the usual, how can I find things? In my ideal, you're after achieving something or performing a task. So it's more like a, how do I this and that? So I prefer to categorize by verbs, like set up or install or something like that, instead of roles. That's another thing.
Sure. No, it makes sense, because I mean, someone who's a sysadmin still also has to know how to edit art, pages, etc. So yeah, speaking of roles, and you mentioned the 4 groups that it appeals to. The current front page is interesting in that it seems a little more geared toward developers or potential developers than toward potential users, which seems to me like maybe reflecting your involvement in developer advocacy. But I don't know if you'd agree with that statement.
I'm not sure. Like for me, it felt like a good compromise between all the groups. Hopefully, we need to cover users, administrators, developers, established folks, the same as people going to that website for the very first time. There's also, like, for example, how much do you wanna advertise related stuff like translations, tech ambassadors, researchers, documentation writers, testers. There's a lot of roles, and like, how much do you want to cover that already? There's links now bringing you to further let's say resources, how to contribute page, for example, which lists all these things, but it's currently not on the front page. And also, when it comes, there was a follow-up discussion after I deployed that change or put that website up, that new front page, like that, what you mentioned earlier, like a more visible download button or something like that. So somebody did actually change the order of the boxes so that download is now the first item, which probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right.
So somebody also brought that up, like download should be more visible, and my reply was, you are probably right. It's an aspect I didn't think about enough or didn't receive feedback beforehand by somebody who cared. So it's great that you care. Please just go ahead and do it, because I'm not the owner of the website. It's a wiki.
Are you encouraging anyone who has admin access to modify the front page?
Yeah, why not?
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
let's say, of course, it needs to make sense. There needs to be a good idea and an argumentation behind it. But that's like with every kind of wiki edit, like there needs to be a reason why you make that edit, and
Right.
it's the usual be bold culture, and then if other people have other arguments against it, revert and discuss, I would say. But I don't see it as a very different page to any other wiki page just because it's a front page. Of course, it's more visible. Of course, you need to maybe think twice. But in the end, it's a wiki, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so maybe we're getting too much into details, but this sort of, well, it ties into a few things. I'm struck by the very first sentence on the site, which is where is it? Mediawiki is a collaboration and documentation platform brought to you by a vibrant community. It's that vibrant community thing I find interesting because it seems like it's trying to sell to developers. I mean, it's an unusual thing to see, especially right at the beginning of a software site, that kind of focus on who's creating the software. I don't know if you have any thoughts about it. I'm actually curious. I mean, what does vibrant community mean to you? I guess this is sort of a way to try to sell people on joining the community. I mean, in what way is the developer community, vibrant?
To me, it covers a few aspects. Not necessarily trying to make, or not only necessarily trying to make people join the community or our communities. It's also, I guess, expressing that there is a lot of people working on this and not only a small number or one company or something like that, so that there's a broader base. To me, it also expresses, that basically you don't really have vendor lock-in because it's a free software project, and you could also change things yourself, take the code and then make something completely different out of it. Because it's free and you can change it. And vibrant, I do think we have, well, it could of course always be more, but I do think we have a diverse community which is pretty active in many aspects. Like when I take a look at developer statistics, we usually, well, not usually, we do have every month hundreds of people committing code and changes. So it is a pretty active community.
Yeah, okay. All right, very good. Yeah, it's certainly large. Yeah, and active. Great. So yeah, I guess as you said, you've been doing bug wrangling and working for the Wikimedia Foundation for about 6.5, 7 years now. Do you feel like you could keep going with it another 6, 7 years? I mean, there's no way to tell the future, of course, but what do you see as you know, what do you see as the future for you with Wikimedia and Mediawiki?
I'm even afraid that I could say I could do this for another 6 or 7 years. So the thing is, when it comes to the bug wrangling aspect, I still enjoy that, which sometimes surprises me myself. But
Right.
you always, every day you end up with different situations or different tasks or tickets, and if you have a little bit of time, you dive into completely different problems and on so many levels, like from the button when I click it, it's not working, down to whatever network layer, site reliability engineering related things. So it's a huge span of things, and you also learn a lot about different cultures when you get bug reports. For example, for certain pages and scripts you cannot read, it always makes you aware
Right.
how big the movement is and how diverse. Plus, I'm usually curious about these things. So the bug wrangling aspect, I'm afraid I can continue for a long time. Yeah.
That's fantastic. No.
Though, of course,
Yeah.
I sometimes also wonder, like, if the movement gets bigger and bigger and more people join, will this still scale? Like, will
Okay.
the processes still scale? On the other hand, if there's a third one, I also think, like, looking back over the last years, things are already way more stable nowadays. Like, when I see how often Wikimedia sites are down, it's less
Oh yeah.
nowadays. You have continuous integration. You have a setup when it comes to quality assurance. That makes things
Yeah.
already, like, I'm less worried than 4 or 5 years ago when there's every week a new software deployment. Let's put it like this. So
Right.
a lot of teams manage pretty well, I would say, nowadays in the issue tracker, and I'm a bit more of a support function, and I would say it's less crucial nowadays to have a bug wrangler. It's still helpful, but it's less crucial. That's probably what I want to say. And when it comes to the future, well, there's always areas that are related, especially when it comes to developer advocacy. There's probably more ways to find and help foster smaller communities, more diverse ones, maybe smaller, more focused hackathons instead of the currently 2 ones that are run, usually one in Europe and one before Wikimania.
Right.
And also related to me, pretty much in that area are developer statistics, like being able to see, so how many people do we attract or keep, how many people contribute, and that's also one of the areas I've been involved in for the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm afraid there's always some related work, or when you're curious to dive into new related areas.
Yeah. Cool. That's great that you're. Well, it's great that your life has gotten easier. Yeah. That's the continuous integration, the testing that exists is amazing. I think I'm really. I guess it's become a standard thing at this point, but yeah, just seeing all the testing that happens now and every code change that comes in is really cool. Do you sleep better at night now? I mean, did you used to have to, get woken up in the middle of the night if there's a problem, that kind of thing?
So I'm not on pagers. I think some parts of the site reliability engineering team are, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not that, so I can usually sleep well at night. But when it comes to, for example, taking vacation, being offline, yes. In that aspect, yes. Like my
Yeah.
last vacation, I didn't care, let's say, being really offline. While I remember years ago, I was a bit worried, yeah.
Right. Cool. That's great. So yeah, speaking of hackathons, you mentioned hackathons. There's an upcoming one. It's going to be just, I think, just a few days after this episode comes out in your hometown of Prague. Do you have any thoughts about that? Are you planning to do something,
I'm mostly looking forward to it.
out of the ordinary? Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, there's a hackathon in Prague on May 17th, 19th, close by. My usual work at hackathons is running around, being curious, connecting people. Pretty often it's really like, oh, you're working on this, you should talk to this person. They also have
Oh, cool.
expertise in these kinds of things.
Yeah.
You also have a mix of, when it comes to the attendees, you have established, let's say, developers and also some newcomers who are there for the first time, also connecting those people, especially if they don't know for sure yet what they plan to work on. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm well, not I guess. I know that I'm gonna give my usual session, which is an introduction and overview of Fabricator, the task tracking system.
Oh, okay.
Because for newcomers it can be a bit confusing. There is documentation out there, but as usual, there's still many follow-up questions. Or giving an overview of technical areas, but I've done that a few times, like all the areas in the Wikimedia technical sphere that exist. But lately, a coworker of mine has done that at conferences, and the hackathon itself has 3 focus areas, like new editor experiences. For example, when you start editing on a Wikimedia site, that you have something like a homepage and more statistics, and it's easier to find a mentor. These kinds of things that exist to some extent, for example, with the Tea House on English Wikipedia, but also allowing other communities to have that. Then there's mobile contributions to Wikimedia Commons, which will be an area, and tools for teaching. So that's more or less the focus, but
Oh, cool.
anybody is free to work on whatever they want as long as it's Wikimedia related. And there's going to be usually a showcase on the last day where people present what they worked on for the last 2.5 days. And it's always overwhelming and surprising and great to see how much people can do and what they come up with. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be intense as usual, not much sleep. And of course the social aspect is also beautiful, because when you are in a distributed environment or project and remote, it's also just absolutely lovely to see some folks that you interact with on a more or less regular basis in person and can have a beer together or stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Well, I can't make it, but and it's probably too late for anyone to get inspired to come, unless you're somewhere in the area. If it, given that this comes out only
you can still register.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, scholarships, that deadline I think was end of January. But the registration is still open, so there's still free spots if anyone is interested and can come to Prague. Yeah.
Very good. Cool. Actually, I want to ask. Well, just briefly, one other thing. I sort of asked about this before, but I asked, for people who are considering becoming developers, you gave the how of it, but I'm wondering if you have some kind of pitch for the why of it. Why should people get involved with Wikimedia or Mediawiki development?
I would probably answer. There's a few aspects related to it. First of all, what was personally for me great, or is great in general with free and open source software projects, that it's distributed. You talk with people all over the world, and you learn a lot about different cultures and attitudes and problems. You can reflect on your own points of views, and when it comes to software projects, usually it's really been that I stick around because of the people. Because when the people are great and friendly and you can learn from each other, that's a good thing. Another aspect is you actually participate in a real software project. Like, it's not, for example, when you're at the university and you have to do this and that for your software development, but it will never really see the light of day. While if you contribute something to Wikimedia projects, this, once it's accepted and merged, it will end up and serve 500 million of people. They will see it. And this is also feedback I've gotten from Google Coding students in the last Google Coding competition, that they were actually proud, like they made a software change and the next week 500 million people could see that. So you learn a lot of skills, software development related, technically, but of course also when it comes to organization and socially. And if you are interested in a career in that area or curious, it is super helpful. It's a super helpful way.
Yeah. Yeah, great. That's very inspiring. Yeah, it all makes sense. Yeah, it's rare to be involved in a project where you can affect, millions of people, let alone billions. Fantastic. Those are all my questions. I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Andre.
Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for having me.
And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, Andre Klapper, developer advocate and Bugwrangler at the Wikimedia Foundation. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.